We looked at it in lesson 6, remember. You had to pick one of these scenarios, and there was 4 of them. Generally, there were booking systems of some type or another, and then you had to go through a design process where you would create a couple of different prototypes. So one was a wireframe, and one was more high fidelity, with the second one being clickable. And you can use a variety of software for that. So you can use PowerPoint, you can use Google Slides. It was also suggested there's an online tool called Canva. So good to know that it's there. So has everyone else seen it? Can you maybe, is it possible to post a link from the LMS in the chat, or
We use Google Classroom, so I don't think we can share.
no problem. And can you download the document?
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. So look, it's there for everyone. Work through it today and the next day. We'll be going through all the parts of the assignment. But in a simple sense, what you do is you build something and you have a couple of different versions of that, a couple of different levels of fidelity. And then you go and you test it and try it out and you see if you can find some improvements that can be made, because you're going through a sort of a demo design process. So you're trying to demonstrate that to the person who's marking your assignment. And again, look, it is a made up or a fictitious scenario. You can invent things. What you want to get across is that you understand UX, you understand design, you understand some of the methods and the tools that we've looked at, and then you create something. But remember, it's not real. You just need to do it. And when it comes to testing, you can maybe test with some, if you guys can contact each other, you can test with each other, you can test with family, friends, but you can invent some of the scores. We looked at, do you remember this spreadsheet? Remember these scores? And really a team should be coming up with these type of scores. But you can do those yourself, and frequency of use and all that kind of stuff. So you just want to get across that you understand these type of things as a method. So you can supplement in your assignment. You're looking for something clickable, something that has navigation. So we spoke about that the last day, didn't we? We did. And so when you're in this type of software, what you can do is you can select an element. And when I go in here, I can add a link to the element. So if I go here and I go add link, right? Now I can link it to a web page where it'll redirect on my browser to an external page, but I can also link it to a slide. And that's how you create the clickable menus in your application. So if you think of, say, let's find something with navigation menu. So something like that. That's my main navigation menu. I've got products, hardware, software, this type of stuff. So I can have sub-pages. So my next page would be hardware, software. So when the person looking at the assignment clicks here, they're redirected to the hardware page. And then this URL would update. So you'd have humancomputerinteraction.com/hardware/software/support. So it makes it clickable. So for them, it's more like being on a real website. You know, this was some of the examples that we looked at. This was a more detailed example. You're not expected to do something at this sort of level. I think this will be challenging to do because everything is very close together in this. But you could show a little bit of variation in your design, in that you could have a desktop version and a mobile version. So in a mobile version, these things will be stacked, wouldn't they? Because this would be at the start, the way that happens when you resize your browser. So this would be at the top of the phone screen, and this second part, the calendar section, would be under that. And you'd have little arrows and notes to explain what's happening. And we had a good example of that here. So label your design. Have little boxes with arrows that point out the features and explain what's happening. So is that considered as medium fidelity or high fidelity? We're talking about this kind of thing. So I would say that that's high fidelity. So I would say what the other one is a more basic kind of thing. This is clickable, you know, and it is pretty realistic. Now, this is a design I put together in 10 minutes. So it does need some work, but I'm pretty sure that I could add some elements to this if needs be. This is an example of a professional design where you're going in and you're pitching it to a client and you get a graphic designer and you spend a long time working on this so that when you go in, you can talk them through the slides. So let's have a look. So that was the last day. So we have to create wireframes for every pages. If you have different features, let's look at the assignment text quickly. Not for every page, but for most of them, because some of them will be very linked to the task. For example, let's look at this first example. A vet practice is looking for a system to book common and recurring appointments, as well as purchasing goods. So main pages there would be the home page that the person arrives at when they go to the site. On the home page, you could have a button that says book here. You could also have other buttons that might say something like book worming, book nail clipping, book health checks, or something like that if you wanted. Those buttons, you see, these are the main types, and these are explicitly referenced in the assignment text. So you could put in a couple of other pages like I've done here, just common pages, a few icons to help the design. If it's a recurring booking, does the user need to sign in? Probably do. They probably need an account. So generally when you're purchasing something online, you have a basket. I would have a slimmed down website, but with a few menus in it that makes sense in relation to your design. Because if somebody is in making bookings and stuff, they might want to contact you, those type of things. They might need to be able to sign in. So you'll need to think about what's involved in the sort of the use case. So like in the second example, it's for an ordering screen for goods and services on board flights. So users in that instance, they're not going to be setting up accounts. They're just going to be pressing a button for the good or the service, and then maybe just selecting their seat number so that the person knows, you know, where to deliver the thing. So must we search for a phone booth, PMG or desktop too? You can. It makes a nice backdrop to your slide. This is a very simple image. If you want to make it look more professional, and you'll get tons of examples. Browser window, PNG, and a PNG portable network graphic. So it means that and then you can go into images first and then do by size. And get something nice and big so that it doesn't pixelate. You can draw it yourself just with a couple of shapes as well. Or another option is you could, let me just do a new window. So this is my browser window now. I can just go in and I do this and I match it to the shape of my slide. I can go in, I can do a screen grab of this. So now I've got a screen grab of my browser window. And when I pop it in, it provides a perfect backdrop for me. There's my browser window. And you can have a couple of different options as well. So what I would say is leave enough room around the edges for your labeling, because that's an important part of the design. So you would have text boxes with arrows pointing in, explaining the features. You can have a couple of different versions of your site. Like this site has a light mode and a dark mode. You sometimes see that on websites, the way your phone kind of updates. I would start on the assignment as soon as you can. It's in the area and start thinking about it. Identify the software that you're going to use. And was the one that the college kind of mentioned to me. Can it export? It can export to MP4. So this is an online design software or whatever. And then the other ones as well. PowerPoint, Google Slides, those type of things. I'm going to move on, guys. Now, user feedback. We've created our design. We've gone through a process where we might have a couple of different iterations of the design, and it improves in quality through our very basic wireframes into a more clickable prototype. Now, what we need to do is we need to test our design. So why do we test? So why would we test?
To check for any bugs or something that might hurt the eye that wasn't noticed
Yeah.
while zooming in.
Exactly, to get a second opinion. So who could you test with? If you were to set up a testing group, who would you pick?
Users who volunteer, maybe?
Exactly. Normally, it's in, I suppose, work. If it's in a professional environment, you're going to have conversations with teammates and you're going to have maybe people from other teams that can give you some sort of informal testing. And then as the design gets more developed, you start figuring out where the users are going to click, how they're going to navigate through the design. You might decide to do more advanced usability testing with a group. And you can hire people in and you can come in and you can give them rewards and gift cards and stuff like that. And they come in and they will work with you and they will tell you what they think about the design. All right. So there's a variety of reasons. It's to uncover problems, to discover opportunities of improvement, and to learn about the use and about the behavior and the preferences of the users. So, like the feedback, the user feedback is a cornerstone of UX design, and it helps to determine if your prototype will meet the real needs of the user. So, without it, you just don't know. You think you know, but you don't know. So, you have to test it and you have to document the tests. And what that does is it gives you evidence and insights as to how to make improvements. So, early feedback can help highlight usability issues, and feedback reveals what works well, and it will guide you to retain things or to enhance things. So, you might have a feature that, hang on, this works very well. Let's keep this. You might have something else that would drop off over time. You might have something else that's partially working, it just needs to be improved. And you'll have to pick at each stage, what are we working on now? But also think about, why are we working on this? Is there evidence for us to do this? So there's different methods, and we'll go through them now, and they all uncover slightly different insights. So when you observe users, you might see them hesitate, but something like a survey where you're asking them written questions, that won't pick up on that. And choosing the right techniques is essential for refining the designs. So in general, try to tailor the feedback methods to the type of interface, user group, and stage of development. And the more accurate and varied those methods are, the more likely that the final product will meet the user needs. First one, verbal feedback. So very familiar to you guys. So it's casual, it's conversational, and it can happen at meetings, at peer reviews, or just when you're talking to your colleagues. So it's perfect for early design stages and to catch issues, maybe something like confusing navigation or missing labels. So let's go over this side. So you can see the main components. You have the facilitator, who is the tester, you have the participant, and then you have tasks that the facilitator administers and the participant performs. So the participant gives feedback. That can be verbal feedback. And they use a method, it's called think out loud, where the participant or the person being tested is asked to verbalize their thoughts as they're clicking through the design. So if I was to do this on that page, I would say, right, now I'm navigating to the top and I'm clicking on the top menu. Now I'm going down the page, and on this I see four separate bullet points. If I move over to the right-hand side, I see an icon and I see two more pictures and everything is labeled. So that's me verbalizing, thinking out loud of what I see on the screen in front of me. And that can be useful because, look, it helps build rapport with the person, the participant, and it really helps uncover not just what the users do, but maybe some of the why behind it as well. It lets you know what they're thinking, which is what you're trying to capture. And verbal feedback adds context to user behavior. For example, a pause before tapping a button may indicate uncertainty, and which then the user can explain. And in many projects, informal peer feedback works very well early on, but more formal sessions are better suited to testing when the design and the workflows are more defined. You're all pretty familiar with verbal feedback because you get verbal feedback in school, in from other people. It's the most common form of feedback. If you're working, you're going to get verbal feedback all the time from your manager or whoever. And they're just little things to say, look, you're doing well, or maybe you could improve here. It is probably the most common in UX testing. Next one, surveys and questionnaires. You're all familiar with these, I'm sure. Surveys can help collect feedback from many users because you have to be careful that you are collecting opinions that are representative of the population as a whole. So if you just ask three people what they think about your design, and it's very easy to get skewed results. But surveys allow you to go out to much bigger groups. Have you used surveys in school and college previously? You have? What survey tools have you used? So how did you create your survey?
Google
Uh,
usually.
Google Forms. And it all pings back into a spreadsheet, the results do, don't they? So something like that. All the big platforms have them. Google Forms, the Microsoft Forms as well. Generally, you have a web form front end and you have multiple options that you've predefined. And then when a user submits a response, it goes across to a spreadsheet that you can analyze it. It might be a good idea for your project to set up a demo Google form and show the front end, the front part of the form, and the background where the results are going. Remember, you can place results. You don't need to test with 100 people, but you can certainly put in scores in the background to help support your narrative and to demonstrate that you understand the materials. Like surveys, they use different types of questions. So a closed question would be something, rate the ease of use from 1 to 5, or they can be more open-ended. What would you change? So what would you change? Free text, and the user can say anything. Ease of use 1 to 5 is different, it's more closed. And the combination allows for comparison and better insights for you. So surveys are ideal for testing remotely or with larger groups. If you guys are all in different places, if you wanted to use each other's designs and test them, you could send a link to a forum and the other person could fill it in. Surveys capture perceptions and they should be used alongside other methods like observation. So remember, you won't be with the person when they're filling out the survey or the questionnaire, chances are, especially if it's a remote or an online form. So that person could be having a bad day and they might fill out your form and be quite critical of your product. They might be just end of the week and they're feeling tired. So they decide to give your application 3 stars instead of 5, when really it's better than 3 stars. So remember, all these methods are used together, and that helps you get a broader picture. So just another method of testing. User observation So this is when generally you work more closely with the user. It can be remote or it can be in person, like this example here. So observing users during tasks reveal what they actually do, not just what they recall later. Because remember, you do a survey after you complete the task. But this is different in that it lets you observe while the task is being completed. And this method is really good for noticing things like confusion or hesitation. Because if you're there watching and you see them hesitate and they move their mouse around a little bit, you'll know that they're struggling with a part of the task. And observational testing works well when users are given clear tasks. For example, order pet food, book a race day. So they will be maybe examples for the assignment. Designers track how users navigate these flows and where they might encounter problems. And observation is especially valuable for uncovering layout or labeling issues, and it helps to validate whether the user journeys are intuitive. Do you remember we looked at sitemaps, the map of the website and how the person would journey through it? So that's the user journey. So usually to get to, and we looked at a few different examples, but usually to get to a particular location in the website, you have to go through a sequence of clicks, and that map shows, you'll be including that as part of the assignment as well. And UX designers use annotated logs or screen recordings to document key behaviors, noting when and why something goes wrong, and it makes it easier to translate findings into improvements. Just another method of testing. Focus groups. This would usually be in later stages because it tends to be more expensive to try and get people together. It usually 4 or 5 up to 8 people, not too big, not too small, and people discuss their experience with the prototype. Now, the only thing is this needs to be fairly well scripted, and your job then as the facilitator of the group is to keep it moving and to keep it on point. And you just have to make sure that you have a good plan and that it just doesn't descend into conversations and just random opinions. So sessions need to follow a guided discussion, but you also need to encourage participants to share openly and to build on each other's ideas. There's a real art in hosting these groups. So this method is ideal. It's ideal for understanding broad attitudes and user expectations. For example, a group of pet owners might provide insights about booking habits and reminder features for a vet website portal. So that's an example that might be relevant to your assignment. So because you've got a focus group of the people that will be using the product. You've gathered people that you know, they're pet owners, and then you've asked them to go in and look at the pet booking site. And focus groups can help uncover usage patterns, feature preferences, and general appeal, but they're less suited to evaluating step-by-step usability. And UX designers use these groups to identify feature relevance, also the emotional reactions to the design and the interface, and facilitation skills and well-planned session prompts are very important to keep things moving. You have to work with the group and to keep it moving to make sure you get the results or the feedback you need. Interviews, a little bit different. They tend to be more one-on-one. So remember, these are all just different methods to help you gather information to improve your design. So interviews allow for in-depth and one-on-one feedback, and they offer a chance to clarify issues, to explore motivations, and to understand the context behind the user's actions. Structured interviews follow the same questions each time. So that's when you have a set list of questions and you might interview multiple people and then you would document their responses, but you use the same questions each time. There's other types of interviews, what you would call semi-structured, and they allow more flexibility based on the user's responses. So there's different types of interviews. Use some of this language in your assignment. Interviews allow deeper exploration than surveys. For example, if a user ignores a function or feature, you can ask what they were expecting to see or why they skipped it. So you can ask these questions in the interview setup. For designs with specific needs, another example relevant to the assignment, you might have older users using an ordering screen. And then the interviews would help uncover hidden barriers like icons that are unclear or small text sizes, say they couldn't read it. So these are some suggested steps that you can use in interviews. Go in with a definite goal in mind, have a guide, have a script, pilot your guide, maybe just do one mock interview to see if it works. Start easy in the interview, build up rapport, follow up, ask follow-up questions, follow up after the interview, probe for the responses you need. So in general, then feedback as a section, each method has different strengths and trade-offs, and to gather insights and combine what users do, which could be task completions, with what they say. And that could be surveys, interviews, that sort of stuff. So use informal feedback and observations during early iterations. So iterations means early versions of the design, because these help shape important details and flow without over investing in fine details. So you would use informal feedback and observations early on. This is a path you can follow in your assignment. Once your design is more complete, introduce more formal testing, interviews, surveys again to validate your decisions and to support improvements of the design. For late stage designs, where the design is ready to be shown to the public, use focus groups to evaluate the design's appeal and does it align with the expectations of the users. Match the method to the prototype's purpose. For example, a booking system might benefit from quantitative task testing. So that means you would test in terms of the time. So there will be one thing that you could do. So for in this example, what kind of task could you set? So you wanted to test your booking system. What task would you set for the user? One of them. Any ideas? So how would you test that the booking system is working?
When it
What's
goes through to the programmer that this guy has indeed done a booking from the front end to the back end.
exactly? So how would you measure that? Because in that situation, has the user booked yes or no? Say I have a bunch of people coming in. What could I do with the users? I'd set them a task. I'd say, navigate from the front end to the booking page, select a slot and complete your booking. What I'm actually talking about is the time. I would time them. So I'd have almost like a stopwatch. And I would say for user one, it took them 12 seconds to go on the user journey and complete the booking. For user two, it took them 20 seconds. For user three, it took them 16, 17 seconds. So then your average booking time would be in and around 17 seconds. So that's a really good way to test, because it allows you to put numbers on what the users are doing. Always document your feedback activities and explain why you chose each method, what you learned, and how it impacted the design. And this shows a thoughtful, user-centered approach to development. So let's go and we'll look at some more concrete kind of examples. These are measures of effectiveness. So this is the percentage of tasks. I'll let you go through this yourself because there's quite a lot in this, but this gives you some examples. Across the top, you have measures of effectiveness, efficiency. So this second one is time. This is time-based. This is satisfaction-based. So this is what they think. or whatever. And you'd usually have a kind of a scale. I'll show you a scale you can use next. Down here, you have just the different categories. Generally, you're talking about in this column, it's a number or a percentage. What percentage of tasks were successfully completed? So you could set 5 tasks for the user and they managed to complete 4 of them. So their percentage of tasks completed was 80%. So these are all different metrics that you can use. The ones up the top here are generally a little bit simpler. Time to complete the task. Wasted time you could also track as well. Did the user get lost? How much time did they spend that wasn't related? Maybe they went into the wrong web page and they got stuck there for a couple of minutes. This one over here, these use satisfaction scales. So I'll show you, there's quite a famous one. It's called the system usability scale. And what you have is you have 10 questions and then you rate the responses 1 to 5. So you would use something like this after a user has used your design, and then you're trying to capture what it is they think. Do they like the system? What do they think about the system? Is it easy to use? Would I be able to use this system again? Do I feel confident in this system? So I would include something like this in your assignment. It's a very famous usability questionnaire, and it's used to measure the usability of a system, the satisfaction that the user of this, because this isn't to do with timings or task completion. This is to do with what the person thought after they used. You've got 10 items and then they're on a 5-point scale. And then the statements alternate between positive and negative. So in general, 68 is considered above average, but that isn't a percentage. It's a relative measure of the usability. So that's not 68%. I'll show you how the scoring works now with a spreadsheet example. Really good to use. I use this all the time in work. It's quick, reliable. It's a strong option for your projects and for your assignment where a simple evidence-based metric is needed. So if you click on the link in the slides, it will take you over to a spreadsheet that I've created. This is the front end of the system, and you can grab this. So you can do your own version of this in your assignment. Let me just zoom in so you can see it. You can all see the screen. You can all see the form. You use this after the, now you could have a web front end on this as well. You could have a form that would connect to it. So say something like that. And then the user goes and they select the option here, that one there, and they go through and they answer the 10 questions. And what it does then is it pings across into a spreadsheet. So if you go in and Google system usability scale example, you'll get tons of examples, but you can also use this one. So I've included the link in the slides. So the person comes in and number 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. And they go in and they select their scores. You could also have a paper version of this. It shouldn't allow me to select 2 scores. If you wanted to do a sort of a low fidelity version, this could be on a piece of paper and they just fill it out and they transcribe it. Then these scores from the 1 to 10 questions, they ping across to a scoring sheet where it generates what you call a raw score and a final score. And these are the sort of the bands. So what I would do in your assignment is generate an example like we did using the other table. So user 1, so here is another user. And you would make up scores like this. So you would say, let me see, let's start here, and 3 and 4 and 6. And this should be a 2. And keep your scores 1 to 5. So now when I pull this down, you can see that my design scored quite poorly, right? Because it got 47. Now you can change, I can go in and I can change the scores. Remember, you can make these kind of scores up. If I do ones across the whole thing, I'll get a much higher score. See? Now my score's gone up to 50 because it alternates. How do you get the final score? It calculates it for you because it works like that. So you subtract one from the score of the odd numbered items, 13579, and then so these are the calculations, but I built the spreadsheet so it would just work for you. So I would say just use it, make a copy of it, change the colors. Don't everyone hand in the same spreadsheet, but invent some of the scores. So I want to keep these. So if I keep these high, you'll see my score has gone right up. See, it's way up. 67 is kind of average. So what I would do is I would have, for the people that went through the testing process with you, probably 4 or 5 people, I would have a table and you could put in something like this where it shows that you understand this and you understand how the scores are generated. So go through this, click on the example. Remember, the scores you're putting in, they're not real. They can be real. You can get, with a small group of people, you can get very random scores. Somebody could really like it, somebody could really not like it. And if you've only got a few people in your groups, it'll really throw things for you. My suggestion would be just show them that you understand methods like this. Any questions before we move on? A few more slides to get through. Go in, click the link, it'll bring you into the spreadsheet, make your own copy of the spreadsheet. It's really good evidence for your design. Just pull the formula down like I did. See, I grab that and I just pull it down. They're all working now. Pop it in. If you get stuck, go online. If you go in and Google how to score system usability scale, and it'll tell you. Try and do it twice. You could do it right at the start and then make some changes and then do it at the end. And then in theory, your scores would be higher at the end after you've made improvements. So test planning, super important. You need to be organized when you're starting your testing. Start by stating the overall goal. What do you want to learn from the session? And this could include lots of things. You need a definite aim. You're going in to measure a particular thing or to, is it a booking flow? Is it finding specific information on a website? Is it completing a transaction? Don't try and test everything. Go in and pick things to test that are relevant to the scenario that you're working with in your assignment. Decide when and where it'll happen, how long it'll last, what materials will you need? Will you need forms? Will you need post-its? Will you need computers? Confirm whether testing will be in remote or in person, and whether it's moderated or unmoderated. So that where moderated is you are present, you guide the session. Unmoderated is where the users complete the tasks independently. Select participants that match your intended user group. For example, something like paintballing. Old people are not really going to be going paintballing. So you would need users who are younger in that instance. Write a test plan and run a short pilot with one user just to go through the test with them, because you will spot mistakes. And that will reveal whether the tasks that you've in mind are clear and that your timings are realistic, and also that your testing setup works. So start small and then improve. How to design effective tasks. So the tasks that you give the users have to align with the features of your clickable prototype. Write down realistic scenarios that simulate how a user would use your system. For example, a task could be you want to book a group event at the paintballing center next weekend. Try and find available dates and complete the booking. You would measure the task completion. Could they do it? Yes, no. How long did it take them to do it if they managed to complete it? So be specific to the scenario that you choose. Use a mix of task types. Exploratory tasks let users browse freely. They're good for surface issues that you might not have considered. More specific tasks, whether users can complete a clearly defined goal. So that will be something that you can, very specific, something you can measure and or time. Make sure each task has a success criteria. So this could be completing the booking, locating a product on an e-commerce website, or simply selecting the correct option, because this allows you to objectively assess whether the prototype supports the interaction. During testing, observe how users approach the tasks. Take notes when they hesitate, when there's errors, listen to their comments, because all this forms part of your evidence base. Gathering data. All the methods that we looked at in terms of the gathering feedback at the start, they're all gathering data methods. We mentioned this. This is this think out loud protocol where the user describes what they see on the screen as they navigate the interface. So during testing, guide the session without interfering. Let the users speak out loud, but don't interrupt them, not in the middle of the task. Let them talk and you just listen. You can record them with permission. Let them, you can do the interview with them afterwards, but let them just verbalize what it is they're thinking. This encourages natural feedback. And if you start talking, you'll interrupt them in the task and influence their responses. Capture both what they call behavioral data and attitudinal data. So behavioral would include things like completion, task completion, errors, time taken. And then the other one includes what users say about their experience, such as whether a screen was confusing or that type of stuff. So you could measure their satisfaction level using the system usability scale. So these Likert scales, the scales with 1 to 5, and you can rate satisfaction, clarity, ease of use. If you need additional insights, then you can schedule follow-up interviews. Ask targeted questions. For example, the user paused at a particular point in the task, so reference that. So when you were completing the task, you paused here. What were you expecting to see? And these one-on-one conversations can reveal issues that might have been overlooked. And then analyzing the results, the evidence. Once all the testing is complete, compile it all together. This could include your test plan, the list of user tasks, the notes that you've generated during the testing, the completed questionnaires, the responses, the interview transcripts where you've written out what the person said, all that kind of stuff. And then you organize these findings clearly so that others can understand what was tested and why. Try and group the feedback by feature. For example, booking steps. Highlight what worked well and where the users struggled. Back up your conclusions with direct quotes or things that you noticed during the testing, the observed behaviors. Try and link findings to specific prototype improvements. For example, if the user missed the confirm button, you might increase its size or reposition it. So there's an output from your testing. The task was to go in and book a slot and confirm the booking. At the end of the task, the user struggled. You noticed that they struggled because they couldn't find the confirm booking button. And an obvious thing to do then will be to talk to them about it and maybe increase the size of the button and reposition it so that it's easier to see. And showing this link between evidence and action is key to demonstrating your UX process and also your understanding. Show that testing was methodical, there were steps and it had a start, a middle, and an end. It was user focused and it covered the key features in the prototype that you've built. Include a test plan specific user activities, what were the tests, how did we test, and document everything. So this is the last part of your assignment. We can look at this again in the next slide. So look, there's quite a lot in that. A helpful tool is a testing plan dashboard. So you can use this as a useful starting point. I've included the link. I'll pop the PDF into the chat. Just make sure. I'll just pop this in here. So you have it as a PDF. It's a good one-page template. It can be a good starting point. Again, don't everyone use the same version. Do your own sort of version in this. This can act as both a planning tool and a source of evidence. So it helps you think about, what are we testing? What's the business case? Why are we doing this? What's the objectives, the participants, the equipment? What are the tasks that we're going to need to complete? Because this one pager ensures that many of the key elements are covered. So this would be a one pager, and then in your assignment, you might have more detail behind this. But this is a good thing to get you started. What are the main steps in the test procedure? So go through this. It's helpful to get you started, but you need more detail beyond this. Each section asks for a different thing, why it's being done, what are the risks if we don't change this feature, change this element of the interface. And there's sections on responsibilities, the test location, the dates, the procedure, all the components that are involved in making sure the test runs smoothly. So look, that is it for today. So unless anyone has any questions. I will post the slides. I will see you again after the weekend. And remember, get working on your prototypes. Think about how you're going to test them. What you're trying to show is a progression where it gets better over time. So think about how you'll do that. The testing is super important because that feedback lets you know what to do next. I will chat to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.